Hello, I'm Mike Robinson. I'm joined today by two special guests in Kyiv. We have Ukrainian Reserve Infantry Sub-Lieutenant Kateryna Koval and retired U.S. Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel Perry Blackburn joining us today. The goal of the session is to have a discussion with Kateryna as part of Profiles Encouraged series for Radio Free Ukraine, and also straight talk about the war with someone who has experience in war, and that's Lieutenant Colonel Perry Blackburn, Special Forces. So welcome both of you. Sub-Lieutenant Koval, you're a long-serving person in Ukraine. You've been in government service, you're a politician, you're a reserve infantry officer, and you've been involved in reforms of national defense and security, as well as the Ukraine NATO program. And you have some special programs that you're working on and going to share with us today. So welcome, Kateryna. Colonel Blackburn, I'm delighted to welcome you. Lieutenant Colonel Blackburn is a retired U.S. Army Special Forces officer, and we'll talk about why he's in Kyiv and let him share some straight talk about the war. Lieutenant Colonel Blackburn is the founder of a nonprofit organization called AFGFree.org, which helps Afghan citizens in their plight and struggles that they've gone through as part of the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan. And we'll want to hear about that. We also want to hear about what brought you here to Ukraine, Colonel Blackburn. Lieutenant Colonel Blackburn served with the 5th Special Forces Group Airborne, and he was one of the first soldiers and officers into Afghanistan with boots on the ground after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Their mission was depicted in a Hollywood movie called 12 Strong, The Horse Soldiers, because of how they rode on horseback to organize the Northern Alliance resistance forces to topple the Taliban government. You should go see the movie and the type of work that Perry and his men were doing, which was quite fantastic. So hopefully Perry has some insights that he'll share with us today. Welcome, Colonel Blackburn. All right. Let's start off with Kateryna. You're a master of many skills, Miss Koval. You're also an infantry officer in the reserves. Tell us about that. Why did you decide to become an infantry officer in the reserves? And what were some of the challenges that you faced when you went through the program to become an officer?
To be a military person is my family tradition, and of course I was dreaming about military academy, and of course I'm graduated from the military academy, and I am infantry. And first time I would like to join military academy in frames of artillery, but when joining this school, there were only 3 of us, and the artillery at that time didn't open, and we went to infantry school then. And I think that it was the great choice, and so I changed. I'm not rejected from my dream. I changed my dream, and I can say that infantry is really cool. So in my military unit, I was the only one woman, and I think that it was a really great challenge to be the great brave woman against my military man. And of course, we have during our service such experience, for example, of being on the border, on the red zone, of sleeping in the ground. And of course, I think that the men from my military unit, they are really my brothers, because we have many moments of our lives. I can say that when you are on the border in the red zone, when you cannot use light, when you cannot talk, there can be many thoughts about lives, about decisions, and not every person can be in such conditions and to stay in good physical and mental form after such conditions. So I think that these men from my unit are my real brothers, and I'm very grateful for them for our years of serving, for trainings. And of course, I'm fond of infantry. And of course, I can say that infantry is a great work because you should be in very good physical condition to make many things. As for me, in my past, I'm a professional sportsman, and now I'm a marathon runner. And it's a challenge to stay every day in your good feet, in your good form, to run with arms being infantry. And of course, now in conditions of full-scale war, I would like to say thank you for our armed forces, for our army, for our infantry, for defending us. So thank you. I'm fond of our army and I'm fond of the infantry.
Well, that's well said, and it's very impressive too, Kateryna. I could see Colonel Blackburn smiling as you were talking about the infantry and all your um, uh, experiences, and I was smiling too. So I'm sure both of us consider you a sister in arms. So thank you for that. Colonel Blackburn, you're an infantry officer and a special forces officer, so you have a lot of experience too. The three of us actually share that in common. In special forces, you know that we have this motto, de oppresso liber, which basically means free the oppressed or to free people from oppression. Russia is definitely oppressing Ukrainians. Russia is oppressing their own people by withholding information, taking basic human rights away from them, this type of thing. It's nothing new. So you have seen what the Ukrainians are doing, both from a conventional standpoint and an unconventional standpoint. What kind of tactics, techniques, or procedures are you seeing that are most effective?
Well, against the Ukrainians, to be honest, I really haven't seen anything effectively used by Russia. Growing up in the Cold War era, we always knew that the Russians were going to be a slow but not methodical invading force, and that they would use a lot of artillery to truly try to punish their opponents and make them capitulate. And I think that's kind of what we saw early on, which is what we learned about, but somehow or another, a lot of folks forgot that lesson and thought that they were about speed and flexibility, and that within 7 days this was going to be over. But the Ukrainians had a great boat in this thing, and they stood up against that and have done an amazing job. And from their perspective, what I've seen from the Ukrainians, first of all, is they've come together, they've bonded, and they've established a quick trust in their leadership, which is paramount in conducting any kind of operations against an enemy force. You got to trust each other, and they have absolutely done that, and they've trusted other nations to be part of this effort, even if it's through support. The second thing is they've done a great job of using irregular forces, and I think those couple things there we can't discount on the battlefield. One of them is more the humanitarian side of it, and then the other, of course, is how you effectively use your tactics, techniques, and procedures irregularly against an enemy to abate their advance and then neutralize it and then counterattack that and regain the territory. And though as slow as that can be at times, because it is irregular, combine that with the Ukrainian conventional forces, and you see that they are making some great strides in both of those efforts. And I've seen it on the ground. A lot of the folks that we work with for humanitarian aid that are pushing in supplies in denied areas that may have been captured initially by the Russians, now pulling back. Those areas need supplies quicker than other areas of Ukraine. So we're able to fly with and through the Ukrainians to make that happen and reconstitute that area a lot quicker. And that's both from the governmental side of Ukraine, the military side of Ukraine, and also private organizations like AFG Free that are in here doing that. And that has shifted the balance, and it shows a lot more caring for the folks on the ground. And that then boosts the morale and gives everybody another opportunity to fight and live and fight another day. And that's truly important when we talk about a long-term effort here in the Ukraine.
In regards to where the war is now, Perry, what are you seeing as far as conventional tactics that Ukrainian conventional forces have been using that are most effective against the Russians?
Well, I think the defense, they're doing a defense in depth, and they've learned to do that quite quickly. That's important against a Russian advance. It stalls them. It also confuses them because there's multiple levels of attack. And then I think the other conventional method that they're utilizing quite well is the counteroffensive, the counterattack. As we know in our military, the only time we defend is to prepare for the offense. And I think that the Ukrainian conventional military is starting to use those same tactics, defend to prepare for the offense. And you see that on the ground a lot more lately than you did on the early days.
A lot of questions are still coming up from Ukrainians, where are the munitions, where's the armaments, things like that. We know it takes time. We know some of them have arrived, a lot of them, the artillery systems, and they're making a huge impact on the war. You're seeing it on the ground, and you are actually helping get supplies, whether it's fuel or other supplies that are needed into what we in the West might consider denied territory or occupied or semi-permissive. What are you seeing on the ground where the ammunition, where the fuel, the bullets, and the guns are needed? Are those munitions getting there, or do we need to do something else in the interim?
Oh, we need to do something else. Absolutely. We're way too slow on this effort to help the Ukrainians. As far as I'm concerned, the entire world was way too slow. We saw it coming before the Olympics. Many of our world leaders even spoke about a Russian invasion, and we slowly reacted when that happened as a world order to help the Ukrainians with those things that they require to defend themselves against tyranny. Bullets, munitions, all the things that we would normally have done on due course. For some reason, I believe the world waited to see if Putin was actually going to do it. Maybe they thought that they didn't want to provoke him, but in the end of the day, that was the wrong decision to make. And now they're trying to play catch up, and it's very difficult to play catch up while you're in contact with the enemy. You'll always be behind. You'll never be able to get enough of the equipment and munitions that you need in until there's certainly a total push from other nations to help the Ukrainians. But on the flip side of that, I have to say that the Ukrainians that I've met, both the civilians and in the military, are unbelievably gracious folks. I mean, just it tears at your heart a little bit, And I hate to say it that way, but there's so much gratitude for everything that everyone is doing that they don't complain about it. I guess I'm the one that intellectually has seen the slowness in the progress, but they're doing what they can with what they have, and in the interim, they're using their regular forces to fill that gap and supplies. And when I talk about supplies, I'm not just talking about armament. I'm also talking about humanitarian supplies, because this effort is not just military, it's humanitarian also. Folks are in a war zone. There has been a lot of indiscriminate missiles that have been launched by the Russians that have killed innocent civilians, absolutely unprovoked. No nation in the world could stand back and say that any of those attacks were justified. And it's not that one or two of them, as though it was a targeting mistake. I mean, multiple times this happened in the Ukraine. And so those efforts are just as crucial, because you got to show the population that you're supporting that effort, the humanitarian effort, as hard as you are promoting and supporting the military effort. And that's what brings this nation together. I mean, it's truly remarkable to see them. I've been here in the past. I actually played American football over here in Kyiv against the Kyiv Patriots a few times. And to see this nation turn itself and grow the way they have with great infantry officers like yourself, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I'm proud to say that we at AFG Free are here to help with that effort.
Ms. Koval, like millions of Ukrainians, your life has been completely and suddenly changed by this war. You've obviously been impacted now, and your family has a long history of service to Ukraine in the military and the government. What kind of experiences, or what's an example of something that you had done in the past that has prepared you for this situation that you're in now?
So of course, this time is very uneasy for all the Ukrainians, of course, because many Ukrainians should have left their homes to become refugees and to live separately from their parents, from their families, and it's very terrible. But in such uneasy times, we should make some great decisions and to feel our strengths. You know that Ukraine has a great history of heroism and of strength, you know, about Ukrainian Cossacks and about Ukrainian Great Army. We have our history concerning our strengths. And in frames of this war, I really felt my strengths, and I was recognizing some examples from my military life, from sleeping in the ground. And you know, if you are sleeping in the ground on the border, you should understand that it is like destiny about will you come out from the sleep or not. You know that Ukraine has borders with Russia and with Belarus, and now these countries are against of us. So, and of course, even being in Kyiv now, for example, in the capital, some people were in their flats, in their houses, and their houses were bombed, and these people were killed. So it's like about destiny. To be strong, to stay in your country, in your city, if you feel so, if you should do this. I'm an officer, of course, I should do this. I should be in my country, with my country, and in my city, of course, in the capital. And it's about feeling your strengths and understanding your strengths. And of course, the other thing that every person should be very useful in this war. Of course, we understand that not every person should have, for example, military experience or should have experience with guns, with arms, of course. But there can be such work concerning informational work, you know, that it's very important. Work concerning cybersecurity, concerning some humanitarian aid. And it's very important. It's too important. And you know that many of Russian propaganda resources were blocked with the help of Ukrainian teams of cybersecurity, with internet troops, with cyber troops, and it's great work. I'm really grateful for them. And it's the chance for the whole Ukraine to recognize our history concerning the history from our Cossacks, from Ukrainian army, from great Ukrainian diplomacy, to remember all this history and to unite against our enemy. Of course, it's very not very easy for most of Ukrainians, because we understand that before 1991 we were the one country with Russian Federation, not the part of the Russian Federation, but one country, the USSR, of course. And for example, many people, they were working together, or they were serving together, or they were studying together. And now we should understand that Russia is our enemy. But as for me, I'm a professional diplomat too. I'm graduated from the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, and my sector, my country was Russian Federation. So I was studying this country. And of course, I've studied in School of Journalism, and I had my practice in Moscow. So, of course, I've seen the resources and TV channels of propaganda, both, and of course, I've seen some free resources against this Russian propaganda. So I know this story about Russian information machine, and I can make such decisions from my experience. And of course, I'm talking to people whom I know. I have my blogs, and I'm always explaining about Russian aggression. So of course, we should not have rose eyeglasses for now, and to understand that Russia Federation, they have their policy of the Russian Empire. And if it is empire, they should invade other countries to have the territories. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's not easy. Of course, it's not easy, but we should understand that our neighbor is Russia Federation. It is invader. So for me, it was, yes, to understand, to remember about my strengths, to understand what I can do on my several fronts, information front, international front, or maybe having some tactical and other tasks concerning my military profession. So it is the challenge for all Ukrainians now to unite, to remember who we are, and to understand what should every Ukrainian do in this situation, to be far from Russian aggression, to win Russian aggression, and our children, our grandchildren, never to see Russian aggression, and never to see war, destroyed houses, killed people, bombings in the capital. I don't know how to say that we can have such situation in the 21st century. It is really, I'm sorry, it is really not humanistic and out of real sense. So I would like all of us to remember that we Ukrainians, we should be strong, and we should do everything to stop this war and to see this war never again.
Colonel Blackburn, the world watched in anguish, I'll say, when the U.S. and other allies pulled out of Afghanistan. And you know Afghanistan, you know it well. You really had a lot personally invested there and sacrificed a lot. You saw a lot of hard things there, and you lost brothers. We'll talk about your nonprofit in just a second, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about what are you seeing the Ukrainians do from a non-military standpoint to help Ukrainians, and what is your nonprofit doing in Ukraine to help Ukrainians specifically? I know that you were in Afghanistan doing that work, but all of a sudden the war in Ukraine happened and it brought you here full steam. What kind of things, not military, but more nonprofit related, humanitarian, are you involved with, and are you seeing that needs to happen more in Ukraine?
So initially, it's this. There's not a whole lot of similarity. Afghan is a country blocked by borders, and no one can. It's very difficult for them to get out. Whereas in the Ukraine, we're able to move supplies from other countries into here that's needed. So initially, we helped with evacuation. We help with feeding and we help with sheltering. And in sheltering, we're talking about moving people, providing a shelter for them to continue movement out of Ukraine, because there was an initial burst of folks that left Ukraine, and then now they've actually, a lot of those folks have come back and are back into Ukraine and doing their daily jobs, and have also contributed to the war effort in their respective ways. So the evacuation has certainly lessened, but in the areas that are denied and war torn, we're able to do what Special Forces folks do and what our AFG free models itself out of, and that is work by, with, and through the Ukrainians to provide the supplies, humanitarian aid that's needed in the most dire areas. So not just bring supplies in for places that are permissive and able to do, but use the Ukrainians, because they have the knowledge of the land, to actually work the seams of the Russians to get supplies, food, and comfort items behind enemy lines, get them to the people that need it. The Ukrainians move out and continue that line of effort without being disruptive. That's the big thing that we've been able to do in some of these denied areas, and that we will continue to do as long as needed. I think that's the difference between a private nonprofit like AFG Free and NGOs, is how we are able to provide the subsistence needed in the areas and work by, with, and through. The donors' money goes a lot further when you're not paying other Westerners to come in to do the job that Ukrainians can do better than we could ever do. It's just a matter of setting up those logistic lines for them to be able to do that. And we've done that also in Afghanistan, and it's a little bit more difficult because of the money situation. Getting money into Afghanistan, we're able to get money and finances a little bit easier into the Ukraine to help that supply effort. So when I talk about humanitarian aid for the Ukrainians that are in these denied areas, I am truly talking about good, nutritious food drops, comfort items, and when I say comfort items, I'm talking about things that they need to survive with, bedding, clothing, these things that they've had to leave to move to a different location, a safe house, if you will, for further movement because of the area that they are in. Again, a civilian area, as just was discussed in the 21st century. It's unbelievable that we're sitting back and we're watching the Russians indiscriminately target civilian areas, which is creating a huge catastrophic humanitarian relief effort just on that part of it. But it's part of their tactics. But the Ukrainians are doing a great job of mitigating that so the military can continue to fight. So the whole nation approach that is happening here in the Ukraine probably hasn't been seen since World War II, in my assessment of the situation here in Ukraine, a country that truly has come together as a whole nation to fight tyranny.
Mm-hmm. I want you to take the opportunity now, Colonel Blackburn, to field a question to Ms. Koval. Anything you want to ask her pertinent to this conversation. So I think from Colonel to young officer, I'd like to hear what question you have for her.
Well, I had a question all teed up, and then she started really talking about being infantry, and so it's interesting because she is a female, and every military wrestles with the male to female activity in the infantry unit or frontline unit, and I've been able to see something different here in Ukraine with these units and how they work together, and they don't make exceptions for who they are. There's no exception because you're a female. There's no exception because you're a male. They're all treated equally. That's what I see. You talked about living in the ground together and using the same facilities and having there's some privacy issues there, but you guys seem to have figured that out. I just want to know if if I'm seeing that correctly, have you guys really figured out how to bring the female male into the combat zone and work effectively as a unit?
Thank you for the question, Paris. So we had no exception concerning that I'm a woman. Of course, it was my choice to become the infantry. So, of course, I can say that no officer and no man from my unit say that it's not the place for women in our unit. Of course, there wasn't such situations. Because of course I've said that I'm a sportsman and I'm a politician. I knew that it was my choice and I should do this. So of course there were no exception concerning our facilities, concerning our living, for example, in the ground, in the forest, no exceptions. And I didn't want to have such exceptions. Because if you want to have exceptions, if you are a woman, you should not go there. You should sit at the office, for example, in the military office, and say, of course, I'm the officer in the military office, and it is okay. And I knew that I should be an officer in fields. So I went there, and I was there with everybody, with our missiles, with our ammunition, all of ammunition, and it was okay, and it was great for all of us. And of course, me being a commander, of course, there was a challenge, for example, in fields, if you are on the border. For example, I had such a situation when I've lost the road. And it was in the night, without no light, without no devices. And my men from my unit were holding very strong things with their hands. And I was running behind them because my work can be not so great like working of men. So I was running and I was thinking, so there is a border. So, oh my God, I should like to have a decision because I don't remember this road, and I didn't stop. I remembered that the road can be like there, and I changed the route in silence, of course, because on the board you can communicate. And I went another way, and my man went after me. And of course, it was a challenge for the commander to have decisions. And of course, it would not be fair, for example, to stop and so somehow to explain my man that I have forgotten something. Of course, it was for me as a commander really a challenge, but I did it. And so I became more strong in this my military unit. So I'm grateful to my soldiers to make some this great way together.
Mike, I think both of us can appreciate that and and know that we've been in the same place before. So that's a great story there about a
you had the
leadership
same
challenge. Yeah.
the same challenge about the
Oh yeah,
road.
doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl. If you're a leader, you're going to have those challenges in life. You know which road to take, and I think that's absolutely correct.
Very well said, both of you. Yeah, Perry, I think we need to get her to Ranger School so she can learn about South Yankee Road, okay?
That's right. That's right.
We've all been there, Kateryna. We've all been there.
Right.
But I haven't been where you've been, in all seriousness. Your country is at war. What you have done is fantastic. And the challenges that you've overcome personally are admirable. I respected you from the first moment I talked to you, the first time we met. And that's why we're all here together. This isn't a news show. This isn't journalism. We're here telling a story. And the story is that Ukrainians are leading the way, and us Americans and others are your friends. And we're here to support you. And I want the Russians to know that. So I'm definitely biased towards that. Good. Why don't you now take a turn and ask Colonel Blackburn a question? So, Kateryna, your turn to ask Perry.
Okay. Thanks. So, Per, I have such a question. You know that Russian propaganda is very strong. And we have, for example, Russian diversionists in our country, and even the group of these diversionists in our capital. Maybe, do you have some experience from your practice about fighting against this group of diversionists, or how to calm them off, all of them? I understand that it is should be the huge work with our population, of course, with all our military and non-military services. So maybe do you have such experience of fighting this group of diversions?
Yeah, so in every war, there's diversionists, as you call them. There's subversive people that are trying to sabotage what you're doing, including your Ukrainian people. You know, we had Americans that showed up on the battlefield fighting Americans in Afghanistan at one time. Separate environment, but same concept. They're trying to sabotage your efforts. And here's where the civilian population makes a difference. And let the military focus on the military efforts, but the underground efforts that can take place with the civilian population will be able to root those saboteurs out, and the civilian population also can actually apprehend that, because it becomes more of a police action than it does a combative action. So you have to use that police action effort that you have in the cities and in Ukraine, other than what's going on in the military. That's one big part of that here. And you can see it both in not only their actions, but like you said, as they use cyber to their benefit, as the narrative that they are coming up with. All of a sudden you hear that some of the Ukrainians repeating what the Russians are saying. It happens all over the world. This isn't new to a war. I think at first it's shocking because you didn't think that your own brothers and sisters, but they're really not. You know, they're not really your brothers and sisters. They're looking for an effort, and they're doing something that's totally different to undermine what you're doing in the military. You got to understand that. And that's where the police effort is definitely required to do that. And the civilians are the ones that will root that out more so than the military. The military will stay focused on the close fight and the deep fight, shaping the enemy, while here in the homeland, it will be the civilians that do that. But you have to be organized. You have to organize your folks to do that. You have to train your police to do that. And you can't be afraid to figure out what it is that is illegal within the laws of Ukraine and apprehend those folks that are doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's very important for Ukraine, very important experience, really. Thank you.
Okay, Kateryna, please tell us about your nonprofit program. What's your vision? What kind of work are you doing? And how can people help you?
My project is global security. And this idea has come to me with the starting of the full-scale war, because this war is not only about just war in Ukraine. We know that Russian policy is the policy of the invader, and now Russia Federation is threatening the whole world. For example, Poland and other countries where we can see many refugees from Ukraine. And this time we know that Finland and Sweden, they are talking about joining the NATO. And Ukraine has started its way to the NATO in early 90s because it means about security. And of course, since 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine. Of course, that time it was a signal for other countries about invading policy of Russia. And now when we see that there is no land operation from Russia Federation, there is no fair war. We've seen what Russia has done, for example, in Kiev region concerning such cities as Bucha, Irpin, Gostomel, Borodyanka, and of course it is not fair war. And that's why I've created this project, Global Security. I think that Ukraine, our country, should be the creator, the flagman of the initiating of global security. And of course, I would like to involve the countries who, of course, against the Russian aggression, who would like to make the great defense in their countries to unite and to stay against Russian threat. Of course, we understand if Russia has started this war, of course, Russia cannot stop at once. Even if we can have peace agreement, there is no guarantee that Russian Federation can make air missiles bombing and other times in other several years, for example. And that's why we should strengthen our security. We should make our global security unity against Russia's aggression and for peace, for development, and for the global security. Of course, there will be several formats concerning cybersecurity. For example, we've seen the great information machine from the side of Russian Federation, the great propaganda, and the whole world could stay against of it, of course. And it will be there, of course, the reform center, the analytical center, and I would like to unite the experts and the specialists, not only from Ukraine, but from the whole world. Specialists from different spheres concerning reforms, reconstruction of Ukraine, defense, not only of Ukraine, of course, and other countries. And I would like to unite also the youth leaders, because we know that youth is our future. And of course, many young leaders, they have so great ideas, and we should stay for these people from youth to develop, to try to develop them too. So there will be several formats, and of course I would like to unite other countries who are against Russian aggression to take part in this great project, in this platform, and to develop this project together with Ukraine.
That sounds like a wonderful idea, and it definitely sounds like it could lead to actionable results. You've been doing this type of work for a long time. What do you think will be the greatest obstacles or barriers that you'll have to overcome to have a successful program?
Of course, we can start it right now, because you know that some of cities of Ukraine are deoccupied now, and it is necessary to make reconstruction in these cities. So we, for example, can start with the programs of reconstruction of the cities, and to have huge programs to work under these programs. And for example, as experience of the European Union, for example, having directions of the European Union, and it is the huge plans for every country and every sector. And for example, we can create together with the experts for the of the whole world these plans and these programs for reconstructions of Ukraine. Of course, for now, we should continue to defend our country. And as an officer, I can say that it's very important, of course, because there is no guarantee to have the firewall from Russian Federation, and of course, we should have the humanitarian missions, for example, with the help of the NATO. And we can create other programs concerning defending the country in frames of full-scale war. And it could be the great experience and examples for other countries to see how it can be. And of course, in this time, Ukraine should not be alone, so we should unite other countries to start these programs. And I believe that we will have the peace agreement, and after having this peace agreement, of course, we can make, for example, a huge forum, a huge unit for the experts from Ukraine, from other countries, consisting of youth leaders too, and to communicate about peace question, about defense question, and about development of starting of these programs. So we can start it, of course, right now, uniting with other countries.
Colonel Blackburn, in closing, I'm going to give you a chance, and then Kateryna, last word. In closing, give the Ukrainian people your straight talk about the war and what you're seeing, whether you want to talk about words of encouragement or things that you've seen that you want to summarize. But also, I want to give you a chance to talk or say anything you can say about your work as it's developing in support of Ukraine beyond your nonprofit, things that you and I have talked about offline, but I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what to share. So
I appreciate that. I think we all need to understand something, that there's these maps that are going around and they're all over the internet, and they show red line and they show all this red area as though the Russians have total control of the red area. And that's inaccurate picture. First of all, there are Russians in those areas. I think it's nodal, meaning there's certain nodes that they are occupying, but an entire swath of country in the east is not totally controlled by the Russians. And the reason it's not is because of Ukrainians. They are putting up a fight at every single step, every single ground lines of communication, every avenue of approach, every maneuver corridor. You can find Ukrainians putting up a fight, and not just their military, but their regular forces. And that is making a difference. The other part to this that I really think folks have to understand, and I've heard some things, I mean, let's just say it, I've heard some negative things about corruption in Ukraine, and I've heard about people not willing to fight and people not pulling their weight. And I'll tell you, that's absolutely inaccurate also. It's not what my experience has been, and folks need to understand that. I mean, you want to talk about corruption, you can talk corruption at every single governmental level there is, but not here on the ground level with the folks, and what President Zelensky has been able to do to help the Ukrainians in this war effort, and his leadership, which is paramount to rallying the troops to defeat the Russians as they advance. And so what that means is, when you see those folks out there on the battlefield, and you really just take a moment and just appreciate their sacrifice for their country and the level of commitment they have to this fight in such a short time, they've been able to organize and conduct these counter operations against the Russians, is unparalleled. I've never seen it in my life. I've been with the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen, and one of the greatest units I think that ever stepped foot on earth, and that's the 5th Special Forces Group. And then, yes, I'm biased on that, but Special Forces in itself, is a great organization to be a part of. But these folks have really rallied behind their president and their leaders. There are great leaders like sitting here next to me. And she, you absolutely nailed it, why people would follow you in the battle and why it's important to have that trust when you go in the battle. And I've seen that here with Ukrainians. I've seen them, when they can't take another step, take another step. I've seen them appreciative for the little bit of effort that we've given them. We've helped them with here with AFG Free. And that, to me, is a difference maker in this war effort. And it will be at the end of the day, because this is what will win the war. It won't be the hyperbole. It will be the efforts of these Ukrainians here in fighting this war.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, Sub-Lieutenant Koval, what message do you want to give Americans and Westerners? What can we do to help? What message do you want the world to hear about Ukraine in closing?
Thank you, Mike. Of course, I would like to appeal for the whole world for staying against the Russian aggression, to unite against Russian aggression, to join the project Global Security, which I'm initiating. And of course, we have now the initiative of our president, Mr. Zelensky. Ukraine now, so I'm appealing to the whole world staying against Russian invasion Ukraine. Please, Ukraine now. For now, we are waiting for the air missiles systems and air defense systems. And of course, we would like to deoccupy our territories. And for this, we really need arms. So save Ukraine, stand with Ukraine, and Ukraine now. So I'm appealing to the whole world. Thank you.
So on behalf of Radio Free Ukraine, I want to thank our Ukrinform colleagues in Kyiv and Washington, D.C. They've been incredible in helping pull this together. And thanks to Malik for making it all happen. We'll have continuing dialogue with Perry and Kateryna. This is just the start. Radio Free Ukraine is an all-volunteer nonprofit and grassroots network of netizens dedicated to helping counter Russian disinformation and PSYOP by leveraging truth, because truth makes us free.